Let's begin again with a whole new religion after moving away from Zoroastrianism. Now we move into a more prominent religion, if you will, and we're going to talk about Islam. Islam is second only to Christianity in the size of the group itself. It is the next largest faith group in the whole world, next to Christianity. Most Muslims, believe it or not, live in Africa and Southeast Asia. Most of them do not live in Arabic speaking nations. Most are in Indonesia, Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and believe it or not, there are almost 3 million Muslims living in the United States. Islam is monotheistic, meaning there is one God, and their belief that Allah is God. Muhammad is the last of the prophets who received the Quran, Quran, from Allah. Islam in Arabic really simply means submission. So, let's talk about some of the teachings of Islam. It arose out of the Arabian Peninsula somewhere in the 7th century, the 7th century. It was not introduced as a new religion, okay? I want to reiterate that. It was not introduced as a new religion, but more of a reawakening of a monotheistic faith that came out of the prophet Abraham. Muslims consider Muhammad to be the final messenger in a series of prophets who were sent from God to humanity. They would also include Abraham and Noah and Moses and even Jesus Christ himself. All of these prophets, according to Islam, were not divine, but they were human. But Muhammad, according to Muslims, is a more extraordinary man than the others that I just mentioned. He was religious, he was also a political leader, and he was considered to be an example for all Muslims to follow. Little is known about Muhammad before he became a prophet. It is known, for the most part, that he took the view of monotheism, even at an early age, when he lived in a world that was mostly polytheistic. When he was 40 years old, according to Islam, the angel Gabriel visited Muhammad while he was isolated and while he was praying. Some say he was in a cave somewhere, and the angel asked Muhammad to recite some words which later became the first words of the Quran. Muhammad finished and he went back and told his wife what had happened, and she believed him, and she became the first convert to Islam. After that, friends and family started falling down and becoming followers of Islam as well. They began to believe, and one of those included his cousin Ali, Ali. He was the first male convert to Islam. Muhammad began a life of preaching in the city of Mecca. The whole concept of his teaching centered around the idea that Allah, one God, is central to the Islamic faith. But Muhammad also spoke about social justice, and he also spoke about the Day of Judgment. For Islamic belief, Muhammad was the last of the prophets, and with him and the Quran, that was all that was necessary, so everything was then sealed or finished. Let's talk about the Quran. Quran. The Quran is the sacred text of Islam. It was and is still considered to be the literal word of God. Quran literally means recitation, to repeat over and over and over again. Even today, every printed copy of the Quran bears a stamp of approval by the Hafid, Hafidh, who is the keeper of the Quran and knows the Quran by heart. And there's more than one of them, but that's what they are. The Quran, the Holy Scriptures, was revealed by Muhammad not all at once, but it was basically given over 20 years, and it was written in classic Arabic. Reciting and reading and studying the Quran every day is key to every Muslim. It is not a narrative story. It's not something you can read from the beginning to the end like it's a book, but it's read in other ways. There are 114 chapters, and each chapter is called a surah, S-U-R-A-H. Each surah is organized around a particular topic. It's not arranged in any sense or order of revelation, but rather roughly it goes from the longest to the shortest. Each surah has a title that was not given by Muhammad, but was mostly based on the topic that it's talking about. At the time of Muhammad's death, most of it was oral teachings passed on from one generation to the next. Later, it was organized and it was written down. But most Muslims today consider the Quran to be unique, and they also consider it to be eternal. The Quran teaches 4 very basic but very necessary thoughts. Number 1, the oneness of God. The oneness of God. God, according to the Quran, is Allah. He is eternal, uncreated, all-knowing, and all-powerful. Uncreated, all-knowing, and all-powerful. God alone, Allah alone, created the universe, and God alone created the humanity. According to Islam, God is also merciful, and God is just, and God is good. Muslims believe Allah is the same God of Judaism and Christianity, but they do not believe any way, stretch, or form in the ideal of a Trinity. Muslims must strive to acknowledge the oneness of God and stay away from, at all costs, stay away from compromising. If you compromise, that is the unpardonable sin, and that's called shirk, S-H-I-R-K. That is to believe in other things other than what you're taught in the Muslim teachings. God, or Allah, according to Islam, created all things. And these are called ayat, A-Y-A-T, or the signs of God. Prophecy is extremely important in the Quran. It is through the messages of the prophet that people come to know and they come to desire Allah. It is through the prophet that people and humanity receive the scriptures, the Quran. Now, it has to be understood that Muslims recognize many prophets from the time of creation. But every prophet was special. And every prophet brought special words from Allah. Abraham is mentioned several times in the Quran. And the Quran also mentions Jesus, but it only mentions him as a prophet, and that the Gospels are a revelation of that prophet to humanity. Muslims believe Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary, but they have no belief that he was divine. Some prophets only brought news from God, like Muhammad and Moses, but Muhammad and Jesus and Moses and Abraham all brought special messages. According to the Quran, Adam, the first man, was the first prophet. And men and women were made to worship Allah and to obey him and to be thankful for what Allah was giving to them. According to the belief that all humans have the right to free choice, each individual's choice will be evaluated at the day of judgment. Let's talk about the day of judgment for a second. The coming day of judgment and the afterlife is the focus of several surahs. Quran teaches living a righteous life. Greed and hypocrisy are criticized. Kindness and generosity are praised in Islam. Muslims believe that at death a person resides in a sleep-like state until the day of judgment. In other words, when somebody dies, they might be buried somewhere, or they might be placed somewhere, but they're only in a sleeping state until the day of judgment. When the day of judgment comes, everybody will stand before Allah according to Islam, and they will be judged according to their actions. And each person will hold two books in their hands. One in the right hand will be the book of righteous works and the righteous things a person did, and the left hand will be the book of evil deeds. And whichever one outweighs the other one is the way you're going to go. If those who are judged righteous will enter paradise, and this paradise, according to them, is a very lush garden with lots of food and drink and beautiful women and beautiful men. But those who are judged not righteous or unrighteous will go to hell, which is referred to as the fire. Let's talk about angels in Islam, in jinn, Jinn. Angels are, according to Islam, a part of Allah's creation, but they have no body and they have no gender. Angels simply serve as messengers and assistants to Allah, and the most well-known angel is Gabriel. Sunnah, Sunnah, was written, and it is a biography of Muhammad. It's referred to as a tradition. This writing encompasses all the actions and all the words of Muhammad. It tells how he lived his everyday life and his relationship with others, and he was considered to be the ideal human. There are 5 pillars which form, if you will, the basic practices of Islam. Shahada, I love that word, Shahada, Shahada, is the declaration of the Muslim faith. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. It's not necessarily a religious practice, but this is more of a statement of belief according to the people of Islam. According to Islam, to become a Muslim, you have to utter the Shahada in front of 2 witnesses. Now, let's talk about the Salat, S-A-L-A-T. You perform 5 daily prayers at specific times of the day. There are required times like dawn and noon and late afternoon and sunset and evening. Those are the 5 required times for daily prayer. They are individual prayers, and they are basically prayers sending requests to Allah, and they are formalized, actually. They are specific verses that are recited along with body movements and recitations. It begins with a ritual cleansing of the hand and the head and the face and the feet. The body, for the most of the time, the head is covered. Prayer must always be done facing Mecca. In prayer, a Muslim stands first, then kneels and bows their head to the floor. And this movement and recitation is called a raka, R-A-K-A. Prayers can be done anywhere, but most Muslims prefer that it be done in a mosque or a designated place of prayer. The direction of the prayer is called Qibla, Q-U-I-B-L-A, Qibla. That's the direction. Shoes are left outside, and they can't be worn inside. That's a necessity. Friday is a designated day of prayer, especially congregational prayer. When Muslims pray as a group, okay, understand this, when Muslims pray as a group, they have to have an imam, I-M-A-M, or a prayer leader. Now, during Friday prayer time, it also might have a sermon delivered by the imam or another designated person. The 5 daily prayers that we mentioned a little while ago are announced by the muezzin, M-U-E-Z-Z-I-N, who stands at the door of the mosque and calls people to prayer. He just kind of yells it out there into the community. Almsgiving is the third pillar, and the almsgiving is called zakat, Z-A-K-A-T. And a set of numbers, a set number, basically somewhere around 2.5% of a person's income and their cash on hand and their property is what's considered to be an almsgiving. It is considered to be a commitment on the part of every believer. SAWM is the fourth pillar of this whole group. It's fasting during Ramadan. Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. And it's also believed to be the month that the Quran was revealed to Muhammad. During this time, they are to refrain from eating and drinking and any kind of sexual activity. And they should strive, if you will, toward new thoughts and new ideas. Strive to avoid negative thoughts and strive to avoid arguing during the fast. Now, of course, as always, there will always be some medical reasons and medical exceptions for the fast. But the fast always starts at sunrise every day, and it lasts till evening when the friends and the family get together and they have a meal. Ramadan, at the end of Ramadan, there is a feast day, which everybody gets together and they feast and have a great time when the fast is broken. Through fasting, Muslims find that they are more dependent on Allah. And also during that time, they are supposed to feel a sense of sympathy for those who are less fortunate. Hajj, H-A-J-J, Hajj is the last pillar and is the holy pilgrimage to Mecca. It is to be done at least once in a lifetime. It must be done at a very specific time of the year, and a special garb is worn by both the men and the women, and it involves a highly specified ritualized acts. It involves facing or focusing on the Kaaba, K-A-B-A, which is a cubical structure 30 feet by 30 feet. And according to Islam, Abraham built this as an altar. And if you remember the story very well, according to Islam, he built this altar along with his son Ishmael. And at the end of the holiday, there was a feast of sacrifice, and a feast begins after that. Let's talk for a second about the history of Islam. Muhammad was born in Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia. It was a significant trading center. Many people who lived in that area when Muhammad was born were polytheistic. They believed in more than one God. Now, Muhammad started teaching in Mecca that there was one God. This brought conflict. And a lot of people didn't like what he was teaching, so he sent several of his followers up to another town called Medina, and eventually he would join his believers in Medina. In Mecca, though, while he was there, he was mostly a teacher and a preacher. But when he moved to Medina, he took on several other roles. He became a social and a political leader as well. Now, at one point there became a crisis in succession. Controversy arose over leadership after Muhammad died, and that led to the development of two basic branches of Islam. One is Sunni, and you will hear these words today: Sunni, S-U-N-N-I, and Shia, S-H-I-A. The majority would be Sunni Muslims. The rulers after Muhammad were not prophets. They were considered caliphs, C-A-L-I-P-H-S, or they were more like representatives of Allah and his prophet Muhammad. There have been, over the period of time, some Islamic reform movements. Wahhabism, W-A-H-H-A-B-I-S-M, was a reform movement telling the Muslims they had to get back to the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah. And this gave rise to radicals like Osama bin Laden, who felt like they were called to bringing Islam into the world. There's also the Brotherhood, the Muslim Brotherhood. They developed in Egypt, if you will. They are highly, highly, highly critical of the Western world. I went back and talked about the two basic varieties of Islam. We talked about them over here, but I want to share with you Sunnis, Sunni. They believe in the importance of the Quran as the source of law, but they also believe in the consensus of the community. The Shia, Shia, they believe they are the rightful leaders of the Muslim community, and the rightful leaders of the Muslim community are imams. And they are both religious as well as political leaders. For a second, let's talk about Muslims in North America. Most of them live in very urban areas. Many African American Muslims see Islam as the basic religion of their own ancestors. And then there's the Nation of Islam, which differs traditionally from Islam itself, but they're mostly found in the U.S., and they espouse, if you will, the supremacy of African Americans. Islam as a way of life, the Quran and daily life is very important. An important part of the daily life is that everything is to be treated with respect and with reverence. To the Muslim, the Quran is only authentic in its original Arabic. Let me repeat that. The Quran is authentic when it's in original Arabic. The English versions, according to them, are only interpretations. In many communities, both men and women are encouraged to study the Quran. We've heard this word before, jihad, Jihad. That just simply means to struggle. In general, it means to struggle in several different ways, personally and socially. Greater jihad, according to the teachers, is a struggle for a better understanding of the will of God. I don't see that we see that today in most of the Arab nations or the Muslim nations we have surrounding us in our world. Islamic year and holidays. They do have holidays. Begins with Hijra, Hijra, which was depicting Muhammad's journey from Mecca to Medina. There's also the calendar. The calendar, according to Islam, is lunar because the Quran stipulates the moon should be a measure of time. There's also a feast of sacrifice. It's a big holiday in which they commemorate Abraham, who was willing to sacrifice his son Ishmael, not Isaac, on the altar. There's also the feast of fast breaking at the end of Ramadan. Let's talk about the Sharia, or Islamic law. So the way or guidelines that Allah has laid down for humanity is found in the Sharia. Allah is the sole legislator. In theory, humans cannot legislate. In theory, humans cannot make laws. The laws for Sharia Muslims do not, I want to repeat this, do not recognize community consensus. But it is the Imam who is the one who holds the source of law. There's something called Sufism, Sufism, which is a mystic type of belief in Islam. Not very many of them found, but it is something that we needed to mention. Marriage and family. Marriage and family is very important. It is considered incumbent upon all men and women to get married. In some areas, the marriage was arranged by the moms and dads or the parents, and others, it's not considered something the parents have to do, and that's okay. In Islam, according to Islam, marriage is a contractual agreement. It's the bride and the groom and the witnesses who must sign the agreement. This is the way it works. The groom is to give the mahr, M-A-H-R, is to give a mahr, M-A-H-R, to the bride and her family. This is usually a gift. We might call it a dowry. It's a gift. It usually consists of money and or property. A contract is signed by the groom in the mosque. And then it's taken to the bride's home and is signed there, and then the wedding celebration occurs. According to Islam, men can marry up to 4 wives, but wives cannot marry more than one man. Women in Islam, according to Islamic beliefs, men and women are to be viewed as equals in Allah's eyes, but that doesn't always happen. We know that. The Quran expressly requires both men and women to live righteous lives and to seek education. That doesn't always happen either. The Quran also encourages both men and women to dress modestly. We've seen and we've heard of the hijab, Hijab, which is a head covering. We've seen that a lot. If you watch NCIS New Orleans, not New yeah, no, NCIS Los Angeles, there's a young lady on there who is Muslim, and she wears a hijab, and she covers her whole head and goes all the way down into her shirt, so you can't even see her neck. Now, the burqa, on the other hand, is a full-length garment that covers both the head and the body, and if you will, most of the face. But there has been a rise in Muslim feminism, which says the Quran must be reinterpreted or eradicate most cultural practices against women. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but that's what they believe and that's what they feel. And that ends both Zoroastrianism and Islam. And I will stop there. I will send you this. I think I will be sending you the notes and things about the tests. And there will be a test on the last two things I've talked about, Zoroastrianism and Islam, for next week. Y'all have a great week. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.